The topic of the first panel discussion is Importance and Role of Collective Rights Management Organization. I would like to invite our esteemed panelists for this session, Honorable Justice Pratibha M. Singh, Delhi High Court, and Mr. Kevin Fitzgerald, Director, WIPO. And this session will be moderated by Mr. Pranav Gupta, Secretary General, Indian Reprographic Rights Organization. Pranav, in his professional standing of 16 years, Pranav Gupta has conquered the feats of establishing his name in the Indian publishing sphere as the Managing Director of Prince Publications Private Limited. With a fervor for taking the Indian publication to new heights, he is serving as the elected Secretary General for IRRO and Joint Secretary for the Federation of Indian Publishers. To add to his kitty of accolades, Pranav also holds the position of an elected executive committee member of the International Publishers Association. His well-rounded industry exposure and experience have led to Pranav being a frequent speaker at national and international events. In addition, his essays have appeared in various newspapers, journals, and publications. Pranav, please introduce our chief guest and special guest to the audience and then move forward with the panel discussion.
Thank you, Nupur, for the introduction. Good evening and namaskar to everyone. Absolute honor, ma'am, to have you here amongst us. On behalf of the Federation of Indian Publishers and Indian Reprographic Rights, I welcome both of you for today's panel discussion. May I introduce, though the Honorable Justice Pratibha thinks she doesn't need any introduction, but but many of my international guests are here, and I would like to briefly tell about the Honorable Justice Pratibha ma'am Singh. Justice Singh, she completed her 5-year law course from the University Law College, Bangalore. She graduated as the first rank holder from the Bangalore University and represented India at the Philip Joseph Moot Court competition in Chicago, USA. After graduating, she was offered the Audace Scholarship by the Cambridge Commonwealth Trust to study LLM at the University of Cambridge, and she enrolled with the bar in the year 1991. Before being elevated to the bench, she was India's leading intellectual property lawyer. She had the distinction of handling landmark matters in all the areas of IPR laws, including patents, trademarks, design, copyright, plant varieties, internet laws, and etc. Justice Singh was designated as senior advocate by the Delhi High Court in December 2013. She was a member of the IPR think tank, which was entrusted with the momentous task of drafting India's first national IPR policy, which was released in May 2015. Various awards conferred to her include IP Litigator of the Year 2012, the Asia Women in Business Law Award given by the Managing IP for Excellence in Litigation, the IP Lawyer of the Year 2013 by the Legal Era, the Best IP Senior Counsel of the Year 2014 by Legal Era, Women Lawyer of the Year 2015 by the Indian National Bar Association, and the Most Powerful Women in Business 2018 by Business Today. She was elevated as a permanent judge of the High Court of Delhi on the 15th May 2017. Justice Singh was the chairperson of the committee that recommended the constitution of the Intellectual Property Division in the Delhi High Court post the abolition of the IPAB. The committee also drafted the Delhi High Court Intellectual Property Right Division's Rules 2022, which were notified on 24th February 2022. Justice Singh was also the chairperson of the Patent Committee of the Delhi High Court, which drafted the High Court of Delhi Rules Governing Patent Suits 2022. Recognizing her contribution to the development of the IP law, Managing IP, a leading global publication, has rated Justice Singh amongst the 50 most influential people in IP for 2 consecutive years, that is 2021 and 2022. In 2022, Justice Singh became the first Indian judge to be elected as the Honorary Fellow of the Hughes Hall of the University of Cambridge. May I have a big round of applause for Justice Pratibha. Our special guest for today's event and fellow panelists for this session, Mr. Kevin Fitzgerald, the Director of Digital Outreach at the World Intellectual Property Organization in Geneva. WIPO is the UN agency responsible for patents, trademarks, and copyright. Immediately prior to joining WIPO, Kevin was the chief executive of a collective management organization. In his early career, he ran several publishing houses and was a writer. May I have a big round of applause for Mr. Kevin Fitzgerald, the director of IRRO, who came all the way to attend the New Delhi World Book Fair and being up among us. So I'll start with the session. And publishing and education, you all know, our culture expresses who we are. Our education enables us to improve ourselves. And for these, we need the written word. The writers and publishers should be highly valued members of society. Collective management for reprographic rights has been well established in a number of jurisdictions for several decades. It provides a simple way of sharing the value which consumers gain from extracts of works from their creators and publish. Let's discuss this, the importance and role of collective rights management organization. And I would like to go global to local, and I'll start with Kevin on this. When we see a member of the publishing industry, there is a marked difference in how the content is licensed and consumed by the institutions and individual consumers. What are your thoughts on this, Kevin?
I think we need to listen to our customers' needs. The customer is paramount, and if we're not delivering what the customer wants, they will find a different method to obtain it. And there's a good example in the music industry with Napster. So, 20 years ago, there was an illegal streaming platform, and it emerged because customers wanted to consume content in that way. And then the industry responded by closing it down because they didn't like the way that their rights were being respected. But then the industry decided to come up with new licensing and streaming platforms, which actually are working reasonably well and generating income for the rights holders and providing access to those works in a way which the consumers want to access them. So that would be my fundamental point. Listen to what the customers want and try to deliver it.
Ma'am, your thoughts on this?
I couldn't have put this better, Kevin. Just a couple of months ago, I was watching this movie on Netflix, which showed how Spotify came into existence. And the minute you mentioned Napster, I connected to it. And that movie is something which I think a lot of the people who connect with copyright should watch to understand how what Kevin said is absolutely correct. The industry in every walk of life has to, modify and, change itself to the customer. And when we look at customers in India today, the manner in which publishing would grow is through digital formats. And whether it's a textbook, whether it's a fiction novel, whether it's a newspaper, when I speak to my children and ask them, don't you enjoy reading the newspaper? Because I like my time in the morning for half an hour when I go through my 5-6 newspapers. They say, of course we read the newspapers, but we read it on our tabs and phones. And they don't read they don't want the feel of the newsprint anymore. So I think that the publishing industry has to modify, accustom, and get a new avatar in India to be able to access and reach each of the customers whom they wish to reach. Whether it's comic books, whether it's textbooks, whether it is fiction novels, whether it is, law books, whether it's academicians, PhD thesis, medicine books, all of these people have moved to digital formats. Today in my court, when lawyers appear, they argue from their tabs and their laptops. They do not refer to books and photocopies of judgments anymore. We all run paperless courts in the entire Delhi High Court. So the way to go would be digital. I don't think we can in any manner, keep that away from the industry or from the society in general. So we just now have to find solutions which are intellectual property compliant, in the digital era. And that's what I think is the biggest challenge the publishing industry faces today.
Ma'am, very well said that the way forward is digital, and I must say that Indian publishing industry has been embracing technology on this. In fact, now all the top-notch publishers and small and medium enterprises have started even talking about the artificial intelligence and its effect onto that. So coming on to this, and but still the collective right management here in India has been a great challenge, which we all are aware of, and the enforcement of rights is dissonant. And what should be the methodology for the collective rights management to thrive, especially in the age where the Honorable Prime Minister of India wants to create a knowledge-based economy? Kevin, your thoughts?
Well, who can disagree with the Honourable Prime Minister when he talks about educating the rural poor? Clearly, this is the future for India in every way. Now, on the one hand, wholesale piracy of intellectual property, copyright works is clearly wrong, and this is a matter for the police and the courts. So that's the wholesale piracy angle. But coming to the angle of looking forward, I really think we need to look forward. And the parallel I would give is 20 years ago, when I used to go to rural villages, there were no fixed line telephones. They didn't exist. Actually, when I go to a rural village today, there are still no fixed line telephones, but there are lots of digital phones. And if 20 years ago I'd been asked, how is this going to work? I would have said, there will be no phones. But I would have been wrong. And so I think the challenge to the industry is how the industry makes that leapfrog forward. Now, we've said digital, but what do we mean by that in the context of collective management? I think that there are platforms which already exist, which contain a lot of educational content, and which could be used by the collective management organization here in India to actually share the content out with the schools in various ways. So that is a definite and absolute route that could be employed by an IRRO in India. Now, the further challenge, which is extant today, is how do we couple that future opportunity with the reality of today, where there are still a lot of printed textbooks in schools. And there isn't a model that I've seen around the world that combines these two. But how about a kind of hybrid licensing model, which genuinely brings all of the content together digitally, maybe for interactive whiteboard as well, and for reprographic photocopying, respecting the kind of 3 levels of content in India, and offer that comprehensive license to the government.
Ma'am, your comments on this?
Speaking about collective rights management, I think the focus has to be on collective.
Absolutely.
Meaning thereby there has to be unity. It requires unity of the industry, first of all, to be able to bring in a one-stop licensing platform for all kinds of printed material. Until and unless it is a collective effort, it is not going to be successful. And if you want to create a collective rights management institution, I don't think it's the money that is the problem or the charges that they're going to charge. It is the credibility of that organization. The collective rights management institution has to be of such a stature that it should be recognized both by the consumer, the government, and the International Reciprocal Collective Rights Management Society as the one-stop shop for copyright collective right management in India. With my experience from music, from movies, etc., I can say that There was a lot of disunity earlier. Slowly and steadily, it is changing insofar as films and music is concerned. And therefore, I do feel that they're at least trying to get their act in order. And that is what even the publishing industry will need to do. Please be united first. Create an apex body for collective rights management, which people will realize that if they want to get a license, this is the only body we need to go to in the publishing industry. This will have to be coupled with a very, very strong messaging. And when I mean messaging, I want to give you a few examples to show that even in a country like India, it can be done. You know, I remember that in my childhood, I used to love burning crackers for Diwali. And if you give me a choice even now, I may want to do it जैसे शगन के लिए जो बोलते हैं on Diwali, because we have been brought up like that. But when I told my children when they were in 6th or 7th standard, let's burn crackers, they said no, we are not going to burn it, and they don't burn it even till today. Why? Because in schools there was a campaign which was launched which said say no to crackers. It's bad for the environment. Let's look at another very important area where India was losing a lot of money, at least within the country. That's Bollywood. There was a lot of camcording that was happening. On the very day when the movie was released, we would find it in the cable network, right? But then the whole campaign started with the biggest of Bollywood stars and producers and singers saying, don't do this, it will affect our livelihood. And today I can tell you, having been on the IP division, the number of movies where injunctions are sought regularly has reduced considerably. Let us take another campaign, say no to tobacco. That's a very successful campaign. So, along with unity on collective rights management, we need to have a parallel messaging showing that publishing, rewarding publishing is not about paying the big publishers. It is about rewarding the actual authors who write. Those very academicians who are in the universities are the people who write books, who depend on the royalties after they retire. It's that human face of publishing that needs to be messaged, and I'm very sure that as on today, if you can find subscribers for various music apps such as Gaana or Apple Music or any of those in the youngsters, there will be a day when people will be willing to download only legitimate copies of books and pay for it. We just need to give the right messaging and give them the right platform to pay. That's my view on collective rights management.
Absolutely, ma'am. Very well said. And as I said, together we talk, united we need to stand and act in the interest of the industry. But I have a follow-up question on this. Since Indian publishing industry, if we recently saw the Nielsen Book Data Report, the India Book Market Report 2022, we saw that the industry is going to, the print, I'm especially referring to the print book market, we are going to cross close to 1 lakh crore rupee by mid of 2024, the next calendar year. And with 24,000 publishers, India is the third largest book publishing nation in the world, second largest in terms of the English language. And as far as my knowledge while working with IP and IRRO, there are certain international jurisdictions where the collective right management has been made mandatory. So what's your thought on that from the Indian perspective?
So I think every government needs to come up with a solution which is relevant to their country. But I have a few observations to make. And first, I will introduce you, and indeed to any lawyers in the room, and judges in the room, to the WIPO Good Practice Toolkit for Collective Management. This is an extremely valuable tool because we have gathered in there a number of legislative and regulatory examples from around the world. And interestingly, some of them are contradictory. And Joint Secretary, maybe I should send you a copy as well, because you'll find it really interesting. Some of the examples are contradictory, but the reason we put this toolkit together is because it enables member states to select models which are relevant to their needs and the needs of their country. But this being said, I think there are a couple of things that I could indicate to look at. And it goes to what the Honourable Justice was saying about collaboration and working together. Because there are countries which have gone to the government and said, we would like to offer a national deal. And my hybrid license example is something which could be an entirely national deal. So it could be statutory, it could be voluntary, but actually the national deal element is perhaps the more important thing and the part of the negotiation. There's another related model which is called extended collective licensing. And the basis of this is that if the collective management organization represents a substantial majority of works in a given class, then all of the creators in that class are deemed to be part of the license. And this is quite a valuable tool. Now, some people object to that forced inclusion, but let me mention to you that the report that we launched yesterday, Pranav, about international publishing statistics, we observed that in Finland, Norway and Sweden, where extended collective licensing does exist, that they had 1/3 of growth on sales in 12 months for digital and audio format publications. Now, that's not an accident, because the publishers in those countries had the confidence to invest in new content and new formats because they knew the economic value chain was really robust and they would actually get a reward for the investment that they were making.
Your thoughts on this?
Going back to the question, you were saying whether collective rights management has to be made compulsory under the copyright statute. So I do believe that some sort of collective rights management ought to be recognized in the statute, especially for publishing. And this could be in the form of, as Kevin just said, as a statutory licensing, as a national deal, or in whatever manner you can do it. But I think in comparison with all other forms of intellectual property, trademarks, copyrights, trademarks, designs, patents, and other important forms, Copyright Act is one place where the Act is a very forward-looking act. Infringement is very broadly defined, so it's not difficult for us to hold infringement when matters come to us to court. But where it is lacking is in the structure of how the industry functions. Whether it is, I think this could be true of the entire copyright industry, not just the publishing industry. So there needs to be a proper framework that could be built within the statute for the purpose of ensuring that there is proper and legitimate legal access to copyright works. Whether we should do it in the form of the rules, whether it should be in the statute, or whether it should be through regulation, or whether it is by recognizing 2 or 3 collective management associations in different industries. These things would have to be taken back to the drawing board. One has to sit down and decide, speak to all the associations which exist, the management societies which exist, and could be, make sure that in music there'll be one association, in publishing there'll be one association, and these associations should work under the overall supervision of maybe someone like the Controller General, who is now looking after copyrights, so that there is some kind of, overarching supervision on the collective management. Right now, each one is kind of operating in his own sphere without a particular supervision or accountability or responsibility. I think that's where the structure has to be changed.
Absolutely, ma'am. So Kevin, you brought a very interesting point in terms of increase in the revenue of the sales in the Finland and the Sweden, while we discussed yesterday at the WIPO report. What I have seen in the European countries, still the digital has been embracing for last 15 to 20 years, and print was slowly declining. But India being a country, still at the moment, print is quite prevalent, quite relevant at the moment. And even while the government is still working on creating the digital infrastructure, and it has reached to the majority of the vision, but still the adaptability and everything is going to still take the time. And especially after the time of the post-pandemic, we do agree that there has been an increased consumption of the content in form of, through digitalization, consumption of e-books. But what do you think would be the right model for us as IRRO or as a collective right management organization to maintain a balance? It should be absolutely print or a hybrid, or just the way forward is pure digital? Your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the clue to this lies in the statistics from the CSAC report that was published for last year, because they showed in their figures that actually there was 8% growth in literary work licensing. So actually printed literary works are still growing by 8%. But there's a second half to the clue, which is that digital grew by 35%. So I think there's growth in both areas. And I think some consumers like both, some like one or the other, but I think there's absolutely a space for both. And I think a direct answer to your question goes to what I mentioned earlier about having a kind of hybrid approach. I think IRRO should include print, reprographic, digital reproduction, and potentially a digital platform. I think all of those should be in your armory, because if you're not offering all of those, then you're leaving gaps in the market.
Your comment?
I think I'm going to start with the figure that you just mentioned. That's 1 lakh crores as the value of the publishing industry in India. Since I'm not aware of the 8% and the 35% figures, I'm just going to take them as Kevin has said. I believe that if you want to focus on only print publishing, you could go from 1 lakh crores to 1.5 lakh crores. But if you want to make it 10 lakh crores, digital is the way to go. So it has to be a combination, as Kevin said, of print and digital. In the print media, the one thing that I don't know, never understood as a lawyer who was a copyright lawyer was as to why these books are so expensive. My own belief is, if it's a 500-page book, whether it's a textbook or any fiction book or any other book, the cost of photocopying that book and spiral binding of that book could be 500 rupees, isn't it? It would be 60-70 paise per page, and then spiral binding it, etc. Even to today, in India would cost about 500 rupees. According to me, the original textbook should sell for 400 rupees. So I'm just giving this as an example, because photocopying is not cheap anymore. Spiral binding is not cheap anymore. If a student can get a photocopied book at 500 rupees and an original at 400 rupees, why would he or she go and buy the 500 rupees book? If you sell it at 400 rupees, you will sell it to lakhs of children, instead of selling it to the thousands of children at 5,000 rupees. So I believe that we'll have to scale up the print into geometric proportions, number one. And number two, on digital, I would really think that some institution who really has the IT infrastructure to host a publishing platform, it could be the IRRO, take the same textbook which is being sold at 400 in print media, please make it available at 200 per download on the digital platform. And then you'll realize the value of quantum over, simple access will be increased. And I think that this is the only way to go forward, because the original print and the digital publishing has to become accessible to the market. There's one more model that I wish to suggest as another part of the hybrid. I recall definitely that in the European Union, when music was being duplicated onto DVDs and VCDs and CDs and duplicating equipment was being manufactured, I recall European Union imposing a small cess on these kind of equipment, such as CDs, DVDs and VCDs, etc. and VCRs and duplicating equipment. So today in India, if the publishers are being really affected by photocopiers, for example, or scanners, I would think, you know, for example, you have these small cess which is imposed for building and construction workers, or, you know, it should be something like, for the sake of authors, for the sake of people who write books, we could consider, the government could consider having some kind of a very small cess on photocopiers and scanners, which could be used as the fund for big time messaging in favor of legitimate platforms and legitimate publishing and legitimate textbooks, etc.
Absolutely agree, ma'am. So while coming to your point on the photocopy, the recent rise in the increase of the photocopy is just because of the rise in the paper prices. Though that these photocopy machine owners have been so tech savvy and so fine equipped machines has been now being available in India, the whole book gets scanned in a span of minutes, and students are also so innovative and crazy about these books at times. What we see is that entire book or 4 pages of the same book is being photocopied on just one. So they will just microsize it, fit into that. So they have their own ways and means to do that. And also one of the recommendation we at both at the Federation of Indian Publishers and IRRO we did was that whenever the photocopier scanners are being imported here in India, they should be levied certain kind of duty or some kind of license fee through which that revenue comes to organizations like IRRO. That would be beneficial for us, A, and then second also we would be able to track who are the owners of these machines and where the photocopying is actually taking place.
You know, this is interesting because just today I asked one of my researchers to check how many photocopiers are imported into India. So it is, I think, 26,73,000 per year.
So even if we get a 10,000 rupiah per machine, it would be a great number for the IRRO.
You can imagine. I mean, even 10,000 is too high. Even if you say it's like 1 to 2,000 per machine for even to begin, you know, or even scanners. These are, and the intention is, it has to be said that it is for the authors, not just for the publishing industry, which is looked at as a company, you know. At the end of the day, the problem is the author goes into oblivion and nobody remembers the author. That's the whole problem.
There are a number of countries around the world that do have equipment levies, and the system works quite well. It's a slightly blunt instrument because you don't quite know how to distribute the money that's received, but it is money that's going back into the sector, which is laudable.
First thing tomorrow in the morning from IRRO is going to be a representation going to DPIIT and the Ministry of Finance for this.
Then I haven't said it then.
So what should be the way forward, and how do we balance ensuring the adequate access to the students and ensuring that publishers and authors remain adequately incentivized at the same time? And I'll supplement with this, and there needs to be some voice around the awareness of copyright and IP laws in the country. Students and teachers at the school and college level do not know much about it. And do you feel this is the high time where we start inculcating education about the respect for copyright and IP laws at the foundation level of our education system? This time I would like to go local to global. I would like to have perspective from ma'am first, then Kevin from you.
I would think that the first place that we need to target is the family and the home. The message that should go is, copying is not a right. The minute that message can be sent to teachers, to mothers, to households, in whatever manner, that is when the movement will begin. The disadvantages of copying needs to be highlighted. The message needs to be very clear, concise and short. It shouldn't be garbled. So in India, have a short message. It translate it into 20 languages, and please distribute this in schools, in colleges, in universities, that copying is not right. As long as you can send this message in any form, I think, people's value system is quite good in India. If you can tap on that, it will be really useful.
Kevin, from you.
Well, Honourable Justice, I agree with that, and I agree in particular with what you said earlier about the other campaigns as being instructive to students. Clearly, that's a really important approach. Let me tell you a story, if I may, about somebody I met a number of years ago who was the principal of the Royal College of Art in London. And he was telling me how his first year students, when they came into the art school, they were against copyright because they felt that it restricted their ability to create and copy and use. In the second year, they became a little more ambivalent because they realized that the debate was more nuanced. And in the third year, when they realized that their ability to earn an income was absolutely dependent on copyright, they became vociferously in favor of copyright. And this journey took 3 years. Now, there's a lesson in here for young people. We need to show them the benefits to them of copyright. We don't want them to comply with copyright because it's an economic model, because it's the law. That's a wasted argument. We need to somehow appeal to the benefit to them. It's the benefit of quality music, it's the benefit of quality films, and it's the benefit of a quality education. Because a quality education does not arise without quality content delivered through quality channels. And, okay, I'm complicating the argument for the students now, but we need a robust economic value chain to deliver that. But the key point of my story is we need to appeal to a student's self-interest. You will have a better education if you support better quality materials.
Great.
I just wanted to sensitize this audience to two things. One being that India is the largest creator of creative works, copyrighted works in the world. But we are not the largest earners of revenue. We can be the largest earners of revenue into two, because I think the amount of copyrighted works from India which are disseminated across the world without royalties, India is actually a victim of copyright violations. India is the leader in creating of the works, but it's a victim of copyright violations. And therefore, India should be the leader in leading the movement against violation of copyright. We should not believe that copying is right, or that there is a right to copy. We have our own country's interest in protecting copyright. Because imagine the large number of languages, the large number of work, the amount of folklore, the amount of traditional music, the amount of, if you say, ghazals, Sufi music, any kind of thing, creative works. Look at the large number of YouTube videos which are coming. Look at even one platform of YouTube, how much money it is bringing to artists from India. So I really think that we are actually on the cusp of using the digital revolution, and if we don't do it now, we will be perpetual victims of copyright violation.
Absolutely, very well said, ma'am. So protect creativity, go legal, buy IRRO license. Kevin, one last closing remark from you, then followed by ma'am, and then we end the session.
So I guess I would make two closing remarks. One is to policymakers, and I would draw policymakers' attention to a PwC report, a PricewaterhouseCoopers report, which actually looked into the education sector and exceptions in copyright. And it's quite a thick report, and there's a lot of really good information in there. But the one piece of information which I think is especially relevant today is that PwC completely independent organization, found that the amount of money that publishers were able to invest in new digital formats and content was equal to the amount of money that they were earning from secondary licensing through their collective management organizations. Now, they didn't say this, but if you flip that same observation on its head, if they weren't earning money for the secondary uses through reprographic licensing, they would not have been able to invest in new digital formats and new digital channels, which increase the quality of education and obviously improve the educational outcomes. That was my first thing. My second thing is, these are important subjects that we've been talking about, but to get ahead of the game, we need to have some more debates about artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and similar subjects, so that maybe we'll end up being ahead of the game instead of behind the game.
Absolutely. So this is not the first of the kind of session we're going to do. At FIP and IRRO, I promise we keep engaging in the conversations and we'll see some fantastic action in the upcoming time. Ma'am, one closing remark from you.
What should be the closing remark? We need to address the elephant in the room, and that is the DU photocopying case. I've been told that one judgment has really, dissuaded or disheartened the publishing industry, and I think that will be completely the wrong approach. Please remember, one judgment doesn't change the industry. It is the way in which you deal with the judgment that changes, the way you think. And I think that there are ways and means of handling it. It is not that there's no rethinking about it. There needs to be rethinking. But the mere fact that some students may be getting photocopied course packs doesn't mean that that's the end of the copyright or the publishing industry. You need to back up and create creative solutions to bring back the publishing industry's own, what I would say, enthusiasm or temper. And I wish you all the best in that.
Ma'am, coming this from you means a lot for the Indian publishing industry. And as I conclude from your conversation about the way people enjoy the culture and the entertainment has completely changed, and this is good. But it's important that we don't leave the creators in the cold. Our civilization has been enriched, preserved, interpreted, and handed over down to us mainly by writers. Our future is too in their hands. Without copyrights, writers cannot afford to write, and how then shall we learn who we are? With this, we conclude this session. A big round of applause for the fellow panelists, for Hon'ble Justice Pratibha and Singh ma'am, Mr. Kevin Fitzgerald. Thank you so much, and ma'am, thank you so much for sparing your valuable time and coming to the event for FIP and the IRRO. Thank you so much.
A big round of applause for the panelists.